there is a bloody fly on my screen. He's been buzzing around for about an hour, and if I get through this video without killing him, I think I want a medal of some kind. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Tyria 3D. I teased what this episode was going to be about last episode, where I showed off a world versus world map that looked a little bit like Edge of the Mists. It in fact was not Edge of the Mists. Today we're going to look at what ArenaNet have been working on behind closed doors when it comes to world versus world. 3 maps in particular. We're going to look at this first one that I've called Old Original World vs. World, which you can maybe guess what that is. Second, Long, Thin World vs. World Borderlands, Floating Keep. And lastly, one I have lovingly called Massive Mist City Map. All of these names are just things I've come up with. They usually just have a numeric for their original name before they are mined out. So yeah, let's get started. So the first one I want to show off is the original World vs. World. Now you might be thinking, oh, sure, I know what you're talking about, Wooden Potatoes. You're talking about the original Borderlands, right? When they had the orb mechanic and when they had the Quaggan and the crate events. And no. I'm talking about original EBG. So then you might be thinking, all right, well, original EBG, what has actually ever changed about EBG? Turns out a lot, because when I say original EBG, I mean not just before launch, not just before the betas, not just before the closed betas, I mean from the original demos, maybe even earlier than that, because of course we never got to World vs. World in those. And yeah, here it is. You guys can see it looks pretty barren right now. Let's bump the fog up. God, this happens every episode. This is EBG. It might seem really difficult to recognize right now, but as we move up, as we sort of zoom out, you'll get a little bit more perspective. This, for example, here is, they're not Skrit that hang out around here. This is one of the mercenary camps. This over here is the swampy, boggy area near the bottom left keep, and that indeed is the bottom left keep. That's the spawn over there, and you can see it's very barren. There's some extra details on here that never ended up in the map itself, like for example this ruin over here with some kind of bridgeway coming over to it. Was this going to be an objective at some point? Who knows? Looks a little bit like a tower maybe, but this was before they had a lot of things fleshed out. This perhaps could have been before they'd even conceived of PPT, and World vs. World was more about sort of pushing through various maps to eventually kill someone in the enemy like Citadel. And this of course would have been the middle map. As you can see, there wasn't really too much underwater content really scaled out for this, but the very center, yeah guys, this is Stone Mist Castle. This is probably one of the main reasons I want to show this to you guys. This is actually the structure you see in the middle here. Is what we see long off in the distance as kind of just LOD, really, for the palace in Divinity's Reach, like way off up in the sky without any collision. I guess they were just obviously using this as a placeholder for Stone Mist at one point. It doesn't even have full like fortifications or walls surrounding it. There's a tiny pond here with a bridge. I mean, this has to have been like the very, very first instance they ever dropped a bunch of stuff together and decided, right, this is kind of what we want World vs. World to be like. But as we zoom out, you will see that a lot of the core kind of structure stuff is the same. So you got the spawn there, you got this keep up here, you've got the same general area, the mercenary camp. This ended up being where the harpies are, I think, but on this version of the map, oh no, wait, this is the supply camp, which remains a cave to this day. Over here we do have like some structures hanging off of the edge of the map, which I don't believe exists in our version of EBG. You've got Stone Mist looking very different, but like a lot of it is generally similar. It's just the towers aren't exactly the same. They're obviously not even using the same remote kind of model. We've got a little town over here. I don't know. Obviously, this doesn't mean anything about the future of Guild Wars 2, but it is a pretty fascinating insight into what they had once been developed. I mean, look at this. This is a serious little town with an actual circular wall encasing it. As ever, to his credit, that shaman did help me locate something from a long time ago that does depict this map. Here's a screenshot we got from the original blog post, I believe, talking about World vs. World and how it worked, and it's actually showing us the map that we're currently looking at. So here, this keep was once called East Keep Vale. You can see old Stone Mist Castle, Castle Bailey. In fact, this even seems a little bit newer. We had the Lagos Waters, the West Lumber Side, West Keep Mill Tower, West Portal Hill, with a waypoint there. And so here you can see this map after it was developed upon a little bit, but still, of course, very, very different to what World vs. World ended up being, the Eternal Battleground specifically. Alright, so that's the first map. Probably doesn't give us too much as an insight, as I say, into where they're going with the game, just where they came from. Let's look at something a little bit similar to another version of what as far as I can tell, the Edge of the Mists. Okay, so I don't know how much this is going to lag my game out, but as you can see here, the terrain's already looking quite different. This is a map we have never seen. I think we are unlikely to ever see. I think it was when they were toying around with the idea of an Edge of the Mist, or perhaps the idea of replacing the Borderlands at one point. They may have once been looking at this map. Now, it's composed of like 3 different very specific areas. First, you've got kind of a base v base setup. You've got what would appear to be some kind of large citadel. Here you can see there's lots of big siege going on here. This actually looks like one of the machines. Why does that make me think of Claw Island? But lots of big siege, stuff we actually haven't seen really be used in World vs. World too much before. And specifically, we've actually got a triple wall set up here. We've got the outer wall, okay, and lots of guns and turrets and stuff defending. You've got the outer wall. Then you're going to break through into this smaller area here, which already has a bunch of interesting assets. And then you've got this wall here that takes us into this inner chamber. And again, kind of, I guess, the opportunity to disable more stuff. And then lastly, there's another wall, a big wall, that finally brings you into this central section here. And players will be able to worm their way up to this flag where presumably the champion would be, and you'd be able to capture the area. You'll notice here, this is like one of the Steam Golem destruction creation things. Remember when Season 1 was going on and we had a bunch of the nodes appear all over the world? Yeah, this, I'm guessing, dates to around about that time. And as far as I can tell, there is no way to bypass. You have to go through 3 walls every time. So you've got 1 here, 1 gate, then 2, and then 3. So, you know, very heavily fortified places. I think currently the most well-defended places in World vs. World tend to be the keeps just to the south of the Citadel where players spawn. Well, here you'll notice there doesn't really seem to be a separate place where people spawn at all. It's kind of, you've got this location and that's it. So I'm wondering whether people would somehow spawn in here too, unless it was contested in some way. I couldn't really speculate too far. So we're going to have 2 of these. Now, yes, there's more of the map over there. We'll talk about that in a second. There's also a giant floating area region above us. Then we've got a lot of geometry. It's very kind of linear. The map is very long and it's very thin. It is not like a big square map as we see. I mean, I guess the Borderlands are kind of long and thin, but this takes it to an even greater extent. Okay, we can tell that there are only a couple of avenues of attack here. There are a couple of bridges that you're going to be crossing over, right? You've got like a little bit of cover here in this fallen, destroyed building here, and it's not quite a tower. It's not quite a place it looks like we'd capture, but it does serve as some form of defense. It seems like a large push-pull style map, a little bit more in line with a PvP map than a World vs. World one, with, if anything. But here we've got another fortifiable location, perhaps some avenues for moving around it. As you can see here, we've got some bridges that come down into these lower depths. I wouldn't know really what would happen if you'd fall. Would you just instantly die, I guess, maybe, in some way? You've got some kind of like a capture point here. Was this going to be a place to gain supply? Well, usually you'd see like actual supply depots in those sorts of regions, so maybe like a totally different mechanic entirely. And as we move over onto this side, you see we've got kind of a similar setup again, like some stuff to interact with, a place we can capture, again, an actual supply depot on this side, some ruins that maybe people could be hiding in, and range people down if they try and come for this objective. And we got several of these dotting the map. You know, you got more bridges here, another supply pickup section, and clearly the idea is you'd have 2 teams, and now obviously we're over at the other base. You have 2 teams. It's almost like a symmetrical map where you're fighting against one another, and the objective is to take the other people's keep. So on either side of this large chasm gorge area, and you'll notice there's kind of 2 avenues. There's a place on the left, there's a place on the right, and I wonder whether it's like, okay, maybe one group will have a Zerg attacking through this way while some others defend, and then you've got kind of a similar setup going on over there. And again, the setup of this location is very much the same before. The layout is different, so it is very much asymmetrical, but you've got one gate you're going to want to go through, then you've got another gate you're going to want to go through, and then lastly you've got the big one. This one's an interior area, and it's got these very pretty rooms, again, that we kind of see in Divinity's Reach. These, I think, appear in that weird chamber sort of near the Vigil headquarters. But yeah, very pretty little room, and obviously defenders could swing around, get onto these turrets on the walls, and defend. So it does look like a really, really cool map that's actually got a lot of little things going on with it, and of course nothing further on over there. There's also this weird, cool little town thing here that I've never noticed before recording the video. So that's kind of the basic setup. As we know, World vs. World has 3 teams, not just 2 teams. The third team seems to have something to do with perhaps this floating location. And so I'm proposing this would be where another group of people might spawn, and perhaps this was their keep. Perhaps once you captured one of these, because there's these weird called teleportation looking devices, maybe once you destroy one of these you'd end up coming in here. Or it's not that at all. Perhaps this is like a staging area where everyone spawns and you end up running down and picking a team, and this isn't World vs. World related whatsoever. But yeah, this is a very pretty location, and this reminds me an awful lot of Edge of the Mist, and this is dated before Edge of the Mist was dropped in the game. You can clearly see they're not using like totally new assets as we see in Edge of the Mist, but if this doesn't scream the overgrowth keep to you guys, I don't know what should. This is clearly very much like the area where we have the 3 different capture locations. It feels a lot like their keep. And, you know, players clearly made some kind of progression to keep moving up, keep moving up, keep moving up. I'm particularly curious as to what you guys have to say about this map, about how this game type would have played. Am I crazy in saying this is a part of World vs. World? I mean, for the scale of it, the fact we see supply, the fact we see clear like cannons and things that are being built on keeps, the idea that like there's even tower-like structures here, the thought to me then that there could be siege as a part of this, all screams World vs. World. But how exactly do the 3 teams play against one another? How does it work? You know, we all thought Fortune's Veil was this big, fascinating map that had something to do with World vs. World. And once again, this kind of, to me, falls in line. This is just as big a thing. Perhaps never got so far in development stuff, all that voice over work and all that stuff as well. But clearly had a lot going on. That's not all with the map either. Behind this map, which seems to just kind of be set up on its own, you know, base v base with a floating base in the middle, over here, we have another big location. It will lag a little bit while I'm over here because there's a lot of, like, plants and stuff that have been dropped around. Interior 3D lags a bit with those. Or at least the version that I'm running. This is actually an old version now that I'm running, but it's easier to sort of drop these files in. You'll see there's a bunch of other stuff. And has this just been haphazardly moved onto the map? I mean, is this playable space? Is it supposed to be, I mean, it's the edge of the map. Was this supposed to have something to do with the mechanics at some points? I mean, I don't know. I'm doubtful to say it did, but here you got another big stronghold, and it seems like they were playing with some kind of concept for a big city that would be under siege. You've got well in the center, and again, on Fortune's Veil, you'll recall that there are a couple of big towns specifically towards the end. It seems like they have that kind of setup too, and what do you know, there are 3 entrances. One of them with like a gate that looks like it can be sieged down, the other 2 don't on this version of the map. 3 entrances, is that a coincidence? I mean, this just makes it even more complicated, even more crazy to me. But yeah, and it seems totally separate from the rest of the map. It doesn't seem like you were supposed to walk over to it. It strikes me that whatever the primary objective was here on this map, it would probably, like, teleport you either into the floating keep in the middle or have something to do with that at some point. I really couldn't say for you guys. And of course, we can't ignore the idea that this had nothing to do with World vs. World at all, and perhaps had something instead to do with the living world, and it was some kind of instant associated with that. This is map number 2. Speaking about the idea of a large city that could be sieged, I'm pretty excited to show you guys my favourite of the unseen World vs. World maps, and that would be map number 3. Now, just while this loads, guys, for some clarity for you, this map's big. Like, in just raw file size, this map is big. This map actually compares to maps like The Grove. It's about the same size as the massive map we saw with the Wizard's Tower on it, and with Sanctum K on it, and with Claw Island and so forth. It's about the same size as Ratasum, and consider Ratasum isn't just a map with lots of assets on it, but it's also got a lot of terrain around it too. That makes it a lot bigger than the one that both maps I already showed you guys in this video, and if you're thinking about the scale of this thing, compare it to like a full-sized PvE map, and bear that in mind because it can seem to lack assets in a few areas. Okay, so here we go. This is the last map. Hopefully this doesn't lag too much, because it has some areas that just got a phenomenal amount of things on them. This is the massive Mist City map. This seems to be, once again, another big idea for World vs. World, and specifically to me, it seems like they were playing with the concept of having a huge city, yeah, that place there, that was under siege. It was kind of, I think, taking the idea of, hey, you've got a location under siege, and running like an entire map, perhaps even if you like an entire game type, World vs. World styled game type, entirely around defending this one big objective. Maybe they came to the conclusion at some point that, you know, one of the most fun things about World vs. World wasn't just the big Zergs clashing into one another, but maybe it was also this idea of trying to defend something, or the idea of trying to siege something down. And so that's what I really believe this map is. It's phenomenal. It's very, very big. I'm actually going to drop the fog distance. Hopefully this means we get a couple more frames here. And let's first just look at the city itself. city. There's no like new assets we're going to see anywhere here, but you know, it's got a lot of farmlandy stuff outside. These are on the outer gates. We've got like some very rural-ish areas, a couple of bridges that serve as points of entry to the map. We're going to just slowly move the camera here. We'll say it so that you guys can take in your details rather than the fact that it would just lag horrifically if I move too fast. As you can see, we've got a bunch of like cornfields, wheat fields or whatever moving around the outside, and lots of places, I suppose, for an attacker or a defender to hide. We've got a couple of windmills. There's a river that actually sort of surrounds, it's like a moat. There's a big moat that surrounds this entire place, which is a cool thought in the first place. Here we've even got a dock, though don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting we'd have like actual boats and stuff moving around as a part of the warfare here. We just have to fly across or actually use these bridges to cross as we can. So there's a couple of points of entry, and then as we come in, we kind of got one outer wall here and a whole lot of other stuff. I wonder if all of these would be destructible like we see places in Kylo are. I mean, that would be like, can you imagine this entire place just getting leveled a little bit like friggin' Minas Tirith in the Lord of the Rings series? Here we've got a giant inn. This again is like an inn layout we see an awful lot before. This is like the very first inn you even go to in the human personal story, but hey. Then we got the edge of it. We got the water over here, outside of the city bounds again, and the edge of the map. As we move along, you will come higher and higher up. We get to kind of, there's this church-like looking building, I suppose, here. There's a forge down here. Maybe you'd be able to do crafting here, or at least a weaponsmith or armorsmith. There's some carnival-style stuff like these tents, and actually some, I think, actually out in the town as well. And as we come higher and higher up, you finally get some more World vs. World standard-looking walls and things defending this very, very upper region here. A giant, big, badass tower, and maybe this would be the very final place where you'd hold your ground and could get captured. If the idea of even capturing or flipping a location is pertinent to such a big, big place. Here we go. Here's like the carnival area. Now, from quite high up, or you know, you could attack from these fields over here. You've actually got like a big kind of circus tent going on here. Reminds me a lot of that area again in Divinity's Reach. And around the back there is a dock with a bunch of ships. So, where would this have ended? Up there at that tower in the very center, or would there have been the potential for sneak attacks and moving around the sides? Again, I find myself asking the question, is this even World versus World? And one thing really to consider is you'll find this portal here suggesting there was going to be entry or exit to the map from like this location. Where that would go, I don't know. So all I can confidently say is this clearly takes place somewhere in the mist. I don't think this gets dropped into regular Tyria in any way, and specifically the map itself is kind of an amalgamation of lots of different architectures and environments. As we often see with the mist, this is the only place ArenaNet can get away with that kind of stuff. For example, right next to this area, quite clearly human-looking architecture, we have a bunch of Sylvari stuff. So let's drop this back down and go have a look for you guys. We got a bunch of Sylvari stuff just nearby. See, we got some houses slapped around, but this is very clearly Caledon-style architecture, and this is much more Maguma-like. And the only places that the devs can really get away with this is in places like the Mists. We even have an Asuran building here on the side, and I don't think this was necessarily a part of the gameplay. It looks kind of just tacked on there. Maybe it was just there to be pretty. But there's like outposts, and the whole map is like this, okay? The whole map has got a giant city, and then just vast plains, huge locations. Here, actually, I believe there's an entrance into the mountain, and there is an underground passageway. Maybe we can find it if we look up. Here, is this the passageway? Here we go, yeah, see? There's an underground passageway that actually takes you, oh god. However this would have worked. Maybe it's just a dead-end mine, actually. Maybe I'm mistaken. But you can get to these areas back here that are kind of hidden behind these mountains. Over here, again, we've got more stuff hidden behind the mountains. This time, got some kind of Norn-looking environments. Or there's another option though, and this comes to my mind when I see a lot of maps in Tyria 3D. Were these just playgrounds for the devs? Were these just playgrounds to test stuff? Or are they just super lazy about where they drop stuff because they know it's not actually going out to the public yet, and you know, devs won't care if they see stuff that's sort of just slapped around. So here again, we come to a very marshy area, and if you orient yourself with north as the direction above us, as I usually did, again, it seems a bit reminiscent of EBG, where once again there was kind of a swampy area in the bottom left. So was this a replacement idea for EBG? Am I wrong to think that always in terms of, oh, they were going to replace this, rather than just sort of add to the pool of potential stuff we could play in the game? Am I grasping at straws there? Here we've got some kind of an outpost. Again, a lot less detail. And as we move around, there is less detail in some of these huge areas. But this is a big map, let me be clear. It would take you a long time to travel across this entire environment. Here we've got some kind of big bay and a couple more docks. And I apologise we can't see the entire thing, but hey. And as we move along, let's get our movement speed going, shall we? We come to this corner, a couple of Norn buildings. These actually look a lot like the structures we see in Snowden Drifts. And then we've got this flank, and this will take us back up to the city at any moment when we turn this corner. The centre of the map we'll have a look at in a second. Oh, I'm mistaken. Yeah, it's when we turn this corner here. We'll move back up to the city all the way over here, and here you get another dock, and that's basically a part of it. So we won't go over there because that'll lag us out. Here, there's a couple of tunnels, as you can see, that maybe we could be sneaking through. Curiously enough, this map, yes, while it seems to be some kind of giant siege map, doesn't actually have any standard like supply depots or tower type things as the other maps I've shown you did. So I wonder whether those were going to be mechanics at all, or whether they were going to just try a totally new siege idea. Like, we do have quarries and things, so maybe it was going to be a little bit more involved, an awful lot of trees. Were these actually there to be cut down to build engines of war to assault places, or what? But yeah, so there you go, guys. This is another concept. Again, I'm not sure whether we'll see this. There is always the option that this one could have been a big PvE encounter, perhaps some kind of large fractal at some point. Dare I say, like an early version of the Ascalon fractal? But there you go, guys. 3 large maps, perhaps World versus World related, perhaps just the Mists related. Hope you enjoyed. I would very sincerely like to see what you guys have to say in the comments for today. Next time we do Tyria 3D, we might dive into some PvP arenas. There have been an awful lot of those, and I think they're very clear what they are, you know, unlike the maps that we've seen in this video, but there should be some telling stuff in there too. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I guess I'll see you tomorrow for the Revenant reveals. Catch you next time.